This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Chapter 10, Figs and Mice, and our symbol is the harp. Elaine realized that she was being carried upstairs by her shoulders and ankles. Her eyes opened. She could see, but the rest of her body might as well have belonged to someone else for all the control she had over it. Even blinking was slow. Her brain felt crammed full of feathers. "She's awake, mistress," Lucy shrilled, nearly dropping her feet. "She's looking at me." "I told you not to worry." Mistress Mikura's voice came from above her head. "She cannot channel or twitch a muscle, not with forkroot tea in her. I discovered that by accident, but it has certainly come in handy." It was true. Elaine sagged between them like a doll with half the stuffing gone, bumping her bottom along the steps, and she could as well have run as channel. She could sense the true source, but trying to embrace it was like trying to pick a needle up off a mirror with cold, numbed fingers. Panic welled up, and a tear slid down her cheek. Perhaps these women meant to turn her over to the White Cloaks for execution, but she could not make herself believe that the White Cloaks had women setting traps in the hope that an Aes Sedai might wander in. That left dark friends, and almost certainly serving the Black Aja right along with the Yellow. She would surely be put in the hands of the Black Aja unless Nynaeve had escaped, but if she was to escape, she could not count on anyone else, and she could neither move nor channel. Suddenly, she realized that she was trying to scream, and producing only a thin, gurgling mewl. Halting it took all the strength she had left. Nynaeve knew all about herbs, or claimed she did. Why had she not recognized whatever that tea was? "Stop this whining," she thinks. The small, firm voice in the back of her head sounded remarkably like Linny. A shoat squealing under a fence just attracts the fox when it should be trying to run. Desperately, she set herself to the simple task of embracing Saidar. It had been a simple task, but now she might as well have been attempting to reach Saidine. She kept on, though. It was the only thing she could do. Mistress Mikura, at least, seemed to have no worry. As soon as they had dropped Elaine onto a narrow bed in a small, closed room with one window, she hustled Lucy right out again, and not even a backward glance. Elaine's head had fallen so she could see another cramped bed, and a high crest with tarnished brass pulls on the drawers. She could move her eyes, but shifting her head was beyond her. In a few minutes, the two women returned, puffing, with Nynaeve slung between them, and heaved her onto the other bed. Her face was slack and glistening with tears, but her dark eyes, fury filled them, and fear, too. Elaine hoped anger was uppermost. Nynaeve was stronger than she, when she could channel. Perhaps Nynaeve could manage where she was failing miserably, time after time. Those had to be tears of rage. So, the girls are captured.
Oh, it's a good old getting trap into. Trap getting into? Whatever you want to call it.
And captured on Elida's orders.
Yes.
As we talked a bit about in the last episode.
To me, one of the most interesting parts of this chapter is the end when the various pigeons go off east, west, and somewhere else. And I was wondering if there are any clues in here to figure out where those other pigeons are actually going. Do you think Mistress Mikura... I don't think she's actually a dark friend.
I don't either.
But I think she may be serving a dark friend.
Maybe. Although I think that the pressure in the tower is probably great enough under Elida's new regime, I want to call it, that it doesn't really surprise me that, and when we see Mikura talking about this later, or Rhonda, I think her first name is, she says that she was given orders to do whatever it took to return this girl. No one knows about forkroot tea except for her, presumably. And she says as much here, that she had discovered it by accident. But it has come in handy a few times, she also adds. So, like, the note that she received doesn't say, if you see her, drug her and send her to the tower. It just says, get her to the tower by any means necessary.
Which, maybe she has other, it seems weird to jump right to drugging them and dragging them in there. Maybe like, hey, do you want to go back to the tower? That if she tried that first, it may have worked. I've been like...
Yeah, because they are trying to go to the tower.
Yeah, they're on their way. They could have been like, oh, you'll give us a ride? Great, we'll hop on. Oh, God, Mistress Mikura, not the brightest. Not the brightest flower in the bunch, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, she's afraid, and we hear her say as much also later that she knows that they're only accepted, or that she should only be running into accepted, this woman she's looking for. But she's still a woman that can channel, and how are you going to make her do anything?
I'd be more scared of an accepted because they have the power without the oaths.
Yeah, fair enough.
And Vino makes a good point that she thinks they're runaway accepted. So she thinks they are trying to get away from the tower and doesn't realize they're trying to get back. So
yeah.
that explains why she didn't sit down and chat with them. So I forgot about that. Specifically Elaine. So she wouldn't have drugged any two women. It was just Elaine that she was trying to drug.
The orders were Elaine and anyone she's with.
Yeah.
So the two women are set there kind of like numbly looking at each other across the room. They can't move much. And there's an hourglass. I felt like this was kind of important, set there to mark the amount of time before they need to be dosed again.
So they build some tension for a while. This is definitely one of those scenes where you're like, are they going to make it? Are they going to make it? Are they going to make it? Oh, the time expired. They can start doing stuff. Oh no, she's here again. It's like, and he takes you on this like roller coaster of emotion from like, it's almost like teasing a little bit, you know?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get this giant relief when Tom and Julian come barging in and like with the woman with her arm up behind her, being like, "Yeah, we got you. This is why you need warders," because that's basically what they're acting as.
Yeah, the hourglass is full. Then the last grain drops. The girl doesn't come. Then she does. She's just late. And then it empties once more. She's late, and then the door crashed open once more. Elaine lifted her head to stare at it despairingly, and gaped. Tom Maryland stood there like the hero in one of his own tales, one hand firmly gripping the neck of a Lucy, near fainting, and the other holding a knife ready to throw. Elaine laughed delightedly, though it came out more like a croak. Roughly, he shoved the girl into a corner. "You stay there, or I'll strop this blade on your hide." In 2 steps he was at Elaine's side, smoothing her hair back, worry painting his leathery face. "What did you give them, girl? Tell me, or—" "Not her," Nynaeve muttered. "Other one. Went away. Help me up. Have to walk." Tom left her reluctantly, Elaine thought. He showed Lucy his knife again, threateningly. She cowered as if she never meant to move again, then made it disappear up his sleeve in a twinkling. Hauling Nynaeve to her feet, he began walking her up and down the few paces the room allowed. She sagged against him limply, shuffling. "I'm glad to hear this frightened little cat didn't trap you," he said. "If she had been the one." He shook his head. No doubt he would think just as little of them if Nynaeve told him the truth. Elaine certainly did not intend to. "I found her rushing up the stairs. So panicked, she did not even hear me behind her. I am not so glad that another one got away without Julian seeing her. Is she likely to bring others back?" Elaine rolled over to her side. "I do not think so, Tom," she mumbled. "She can't let too many people know about herself." Figured I'd cut it there, but at this point, they just assume she's a dark friend.
Right, because she has captured them, and again, they don't know about the split in the tower. They don't know they are technically runaway accepted yet. They just don't know that. As far as they know, they're out of the tower on orders of the Amerlin. So, yeah, this is all news to them, and they make the assumption that, well, obviously we're being hunted by the Black Ajah because we're hunting the Black Ajah, and so these must be dark friends trying to capture us on their orders. Which is a fair assumption to make if you didn't know about the White Tower split, which they don't.
And as they're slowly recovering, Julian walks in with Mistress Mikura. She's at the point of his belt knife. He said he found her.
Then we get one of my favorite little scenes like this. One of my favorite torture scenes from any book, really. which is like...
It's not a torture scene.
It's not a torture scene. He uses his mind, right, to make her think he's going to torture her. And the naming of the 3 random ingredients is just beautiful icing on one of my favorite cake scenes.
Right, so Julian is leading Mistress Mikura up the stairs by the point of a knife, and as the girls are recovering, Nynaeve starts questioning her. I'll read a little bit here, not too much. "Who do you report to in the tower?" Nynaeve barked. The seamstress looked sick, but she clammed her mouth shut determinedly. "If you don't talk," Nynaeve told her, scowling, "I'll let Julian have you. He's a Terran thief catcher, and he knows how to bring out a confession as quickly as any White Cloak questioner. don't you, Julin? Some rope to tie her, he said, grinning a grin so villainous that Elaine almost tried to step away from him. Some rags to gag her until she's ready to talk. Some cooking oil and salt. His chuckle curdled Elaine's blood. Schildsock. Mistress Makura held herself rigidly against the wall, staring at him, eyes as wide as they would go. Lucy looked at him as if she had just turned into a Trolloc, 8 feet tall and complete with horns. Very well, Nynaeve said after a moment. You should find everything you need in the kitchen, Julin. Elaine shifted a startled look from her to the thief-catcher and back. Surely they did not really mean to... Not Nynaeve. Narenwin Barda, the seamstress gasped suddenly. Words tripped over one another, spilling out of her. I send my reports to Narenwin Barda, at an inn in Tarvalin called the Upriver Run. Avi Shendar keeps pigeons for me on the edge of town. He doesn't know who I send messages to or where I get them from, and he does not care. His wife had the falling sickness and... She trailed off, shuddering and watching Julin. So, that worked. Aradia just showed up to say nat 20 on deception and intimidation. Thank you for that, Aradia.
Already, you've been playing too much D&D.
Nynaeve starts asking questions like, I want more names, inside the tower or out. And Mistress Makura says she doesn't have any more. I believe her. Nynaeve says, how long have you been a dark friend for? How long have you been serving the Black Aja? And the woman, like, kind of freaks out. She's like, you know, I am not a dark friend. And wait a minute, you mean the Black Aja actually exists? And I believe her. She doesn't know.
I love the assistant's reaction, especially in the audiobooks. Kate Redding does a great job of being like, we're not dark friends. And she looks over at her friend and goes, well, I'm not. Like, that's such a, I don't know, that line is so great of like, wait a minute, did I not know something about you? And she just conveys like a whole bunch of meaning in that one line. The voice, it's one of those spots where the voice acting is just spot on like a minor little character, on a minor little line. But it's what makes Kate Redding and Michael Kramer the best.
Totally. It goes on, if you serve the yellow, Nynaeve said slowly, why did you drug us? It was her, the seamstress replied, nodding at Elaine. I was sent her description a month since, right down to that way she holds her chin sometimes so she seems to be looking down at you. Narenwin said she might use the name Elaine, and even claim to be of a noble house.
Ha! That actually seems to be one of Elaine's curses, is that whenever she claims to be queen, nobody fucking believes her.
Because you can't just come out with that. Nobody's going to believe you. Well, I'm the queen of a foreign land, and everybody's like, yeah, sure you are. Sit down, girl. Don't seem like a queen to me.
Yeah, some random 16-year-old that's been like in tights up on a tightrope. Yeah.
Where's your armies? Where's your palace?
Where are your soldiers? Especially when she's not being Aes Sedai, when she's just being like random ass girl. Like I think the Ch10 woman, I don't remember her name, but the elephant handler, the Shreddit handler. Elaine tries to like pull out her "I'm nobility" card on the Ch10, so she'll obey, and the woman's like, pfft, and smacks her. It's like, you're nobility. you're no nobility. That's tough to say. No nobility. You're not nobility. You're an imposter. She never claiming the fact that she's queen or the daughter heir never does her any good. Not once.
Yeah, well, if you're not actually sitting on the throne, it just doesn't serve you very much, unless you're bringing a retinue with you or something.
Mm-hmm. He has these things for his characters. She puts her nose up in the air. That's why she inhales her veils. She talks about her mother all the time. I mean, she's such this like spoiled little child learning the real world. And with Nynaeve, it's like tugging on the braid and, the sniffing. And I don't know.
We find out a little bit about Mistress Makura's plans, that it was basically to keep them drugged all the way to Tarvalin in the back of a cart.
I thought it was a clever story that the drug that is knocking them out is the only thing keeping them alive.
Yes. You're referring to Rhonda says that she hired a man with a cart to keep them drugged all the way to Tarvalin, and what she told him was that these two women are so ill that they will die without Aes Sedai healing. The only thing that'll keep them alive is to be drugged with this tea every couple of hours.
And that Noi Torvald, and he shows up. We actually get his POV for a second here at the end of this chapter. Talk about a minor character's POV for Robert Jordan.
Yes. Nynaeve says, and what was the real message? The woman's like, I gave you the real message. Also believe that that's true. And then they start begging to not let Julian use the salt.
Not the salt!
And Nynaeve just looks at them meanly and says, let's go downstairs where we can talk privately. On the way down, I'll read this little 2 paragraphs, but... Julian, she asked hesitantly as they were walking down the stairs, what were you going to do with the salt and cooking oil? Not exactly, she added more quickly, just a general idea. He looked at her for a moment. I do not know, but they did not either. That is the trick of it. Their minds made up worse than I ever could. I have seen a tough man break when I sent for a basket of figs and some mice. You have to be careful, though. Some will confess to anything, true or not, just to escape what they imagine. I do not think that those 2 did, though.
Figs and Mice, title of the chapter. Yeah, I think that one of the things he does really acknowledge is that not the information you get from this kind of torture is not super reliable. You're better off befriending folks, really, if you can.
Right, it's like using any other kind of, what's these days called no-touch torture. You break a person to find out what they know, but it doesn't really matter whether it's touch torture or not. If you just don't let someone sleep for 7 days, they will tell you anything to just sleep.
Right. Hell, you don't let me sleep for 24 hours, I'll tell you anything if you let me sleep. I like sleep.
Yeah, right?
Jesus.
At the end of a particularly long day, I'll tell you any kind of story you want for like a beer. Footrest or something.
Did I kill him? Sure, fine. Yeah, whatever. Just give me a beer.
Oh, I also thought this was important. Tom, Nynaeve said, lifting the lids on various containers and peering in. She's going through Mikura's cupboard. Julian, she paused, took a deep breath, and still not looking at the 2 men, said, Thank you. I begin to see why Aes Sedai have warders. Thank you very much. And I'm skipping ahead a bit, but the 2 men stared at one another in open amazement. They had surely been ready for the usual rough side of Nynaeve's tongue. Elaine was almost as shocked. Nynaeve liked having to be helped as much as she liked being wrong. Either made her as prickly as a briar, though of course she always claimed to be a picture of sweet reason and sense. Maybe the only time Nynaeve apologizes to anyone in the whole series.
There's a whole period of time where Egwene douses her with sheep's root tongue, and she gets all whenever she starts to lie, she gets that taste on her tongue, and she starts apologizing to folks, and she is coming a long way. But she does that whole apology to Matt, where she's not super happy about that. She apologizes quite a bit, despite hating every second of it.
Matt, I'm sorry that you're an idiot. No, it's real. She does apologize about that in the future, but it is one of her least favorite things to do. She hates it.
Absolutely.
Hates not being right, and hates accepting help from anyone for any reason.
Yeah, she can do it. She's fine. Back off. I got it. Okay. I just noticed you're trying to save the world all by yourself over there. Are you sure you don't want a little help? No, I'm good. Okay.
And like we were talking about, I think at the beginning of the last episode, Nynaeve is growing as a person, and we see that here in many different ways and throughout the series. And I also kind of wanted to add, right after the apology sequence, Nynaeve finds out that women don't follow your old craft, Tom calls it, in Amadisha. It's too dangerous for them. For most of those, it's only a sideline. So he's saying, this woman is kind of like what you think of as a wisdom, but she's not. She's a secret wisdom. She's like a secret herbalist. She runs her fabric and clothing shop, her seamstress shop, and on the side helps people out if their kid has a fever. But the whole point of that was that when Nynaeve finds out that only men study herbs in Amadisha, she says, what could a man ever know about curing anything? I'd as soon ask a farrier to make me a dress. And I just kind of wanted to point that out because it brought me back a little bit and settled or kind of demonstrated that Nynaeve's character is in the middle of learning about the world. She's still very much centered in her home, and she has difficulty understanding other cultures and belief systems.
We definitely talk about her as the more mature of the Two Rivers folks. You know, she's not the kids that the other four are. But at the same time, she's not much older, and she's still only ever experienced Emmons Field before she left.
She's only lived in this one tiny world, and she doesn't really understand what is outside of it.
She has a very good understanding of the world when she can put it into women's circle, men's circle, village terms.
Right, yeah. But, like, the strictness of her own Two Rivers morality, I mean, that never really goes away.
No, although I think it helps a little bit when she has a TFoH marriage. And certain rules are put in place in her relationship that dictate life in private and life in public.
I think that is a great idea. Just that, well, it's power sharing, right? So out in public, Nynaeve is the boss, right?
Right.
In private, the opposite.
Yeah.
And,
so he never has to listen when they're in private. Maybe he doesn't want to. But in public, because he has to obey all things instantly in what she does.
Well, yeah, I think I've thought about this a little, and it's actually kind of a cool system, because if you abuse it, then the other person can just abuse it the rest of the time. So you wouldn't do that naturally, right? You have to share power, which is, I think that's a clever system.
It seems like it would help with some domestic abuse cases and stuff like that, where, like, yeah, you can beat the shit out of me at home, but in public, I can tell you to, like, get on the ground and crawl, and no one's going to say a goddamn word.
Yeah.
And it also
you're scrubbing the decks for the rest of your damn life.
It only really works in a society that is highly, highly regimented and ranked, and where in the process of, you know, for the Ch10, what it is as you go up and down the various ranks, you may pass your partner various times and have to be in charge with them in public. And, well, how do you handle that?
TFoH.
The TFoH. Did I say the Ch10? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Like, I do. They both start with an S and E, and, like, it's just hard not, and it's hard not to mix those up. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, and just that as they change ranks, sometimes one may have to obey the other one in public, and, like, that's hard to do in our society. A lot of times what we do is just avoid those kind of situations. But if you can't, well, then you need some sort of balance, and the way they do that is balance the public relationship with the private. So that way, like, if you've been a couple of years, you know, the commander of your sibling, or of your spouse, sibling, Jesus, that's Game of Thrones, you have a chance that when they rise up past you in rank, then things in the bedroom swap. So if Lan was ever to take charge in public, you know, through some change in rank, for some reason I started going crazy, cool alternate history. What if Rand used the female half of the power to seal away the Dark One, and women started going crazy, and men had their side cleansed?
To be honest, I think we'd be totally screwed. Like, not even just mostly like they are right now.
Right.
And not because of the sexes or anything, but I think that, you know, the male channelers that are around now, first of all, a lot of them are slightly mad anyway. But even after the source is cleansed, you have a bunch of untrained channelers with no system to guide them, no laws or rules for the Black Tower. They'd be starting from scratch.
Totally.
They don't know anything. Yeah, and the Aes Sedai know little, but at least they know something, you know. There's no history books in the Black Tower, for instance.
But that's what I imagine would have happened if he hadn't figured out that Kalandor was a true power Sangreal and been able to take possession of Moradin. He would have gone in there with Nynaeve and himself and probably the Choden Call, and would have used the female half and the male half of the Source together, and it would have resealed the prison, but the Dark One would have still been able to do a counterstrike on the female half of the Source.
Yeah, he had to have the filter. That's
my headcanon. But he needed that true power to protect both the female and the male half of the Source, so the Dark One could only taint himself. Okay, I have one beef with this thing. Nynaeve gets up and says, you can walk most things off. Isn't that bullshit? Isn't it like you can't sober up just from, like, walking around or going for a run?
I mean,
like, once the drug's in your system, it's in your system.
I think I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I think in my personal experience, it kind of kicks your body into gear enough that you'll recover faster than laying down and staying still. Like, your blood's moving, your organs are filtering. Like, I feel like it helps. I always thought that the best way to get rid of a hangover really is, like, chug a shitload of water and go for a jog on a warm day. Just sweat. Like, move.
Absolutely. I'm not talking hangover.
yourself.
I'm talking drunk.
Well, yeah.
And that's where I think it might be one of those myths. You know, because they always do that thing like, how do you sober someone up? And okay, during the stupid food handlers test, how do you they do that thing where it's like, how do you sober someone up? Give them a cup of coffee? Well, no, of course not. Put them in a shower. That doesn't really do it. Go for and then the other two options are go exercise or give it time. And it's
the
like
only real way is time.
And the only real way is time. And exercise, like, it might slightly accelerate your metabolism and get the blood flowing, but your liver is still just filtering as fast as it can. Like, and being active isn't going to help your liver filter. And it's just one of those myths that people think, like, oh, maybe getting up gives you, like, a dose of adrenaline, and that helps you, like, feel like you're less drunk. But you're still just as drunk.
I don't really know if it actually would work. And like Vino just said this, and I have the kind of same thinking that if you're moving, your body is just functioning at a higher, so like you have higher blood pressure and your heart's beating more times per minute, and I feel like it helps. It helps you get centered, but as far as like, does the fact that the blood is moving faster through your body actually, and therefore through the filter more times, actually, can your organs actually filter out the alcohol faster? I have no idea. I don't know. But yes, and like Sakhan saying, active rest, I feel like helps me recover better than just laying around. But again, I have no idea. I have no idea if that's real, or if maybe like the fact that your blood is moving in you makes you feel better. It just makes you feel better, you know? Think more clearly because you're getting a little exercise. Maybe it's just what you think. So you're like, I'm taking control, and therefore you feel better because you think you're taking control.
And we love thinking we can do something.
Yeah, those are the most frustrating situations in life, when shit's going wrong and there's just nothing you can do. Or you just have to wait, you know? Such a frustrating feeling.
I often think that way about colds as well, like especially like the flu. I mean, obviously vaccinate. But once you have the flu, you can't do shit. You know, vitamin C is not going to get you better any faster. All that, like, you know, especially all the antibiotics you take aren't going to make a lick of difference. If anything, they're going to make you have digestive issues. You know, just suffer from the flu. That's all you can do. There's nothing else. Like, just suffer, and you'll be better off because you won't be dealing with the side effects of whatever treatment trying to inflict on yourself.
I think that light exercise, there's something to be said for it.
Oh, definitely.
Just makes everything work a little better.
Yeah, for health and breathing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. You know, drinking water and light exercise is always a good idea. Like, totally down with that.
And folks, don't follow any of the medical advice you hear on this podcast. We are not doctors.
But I know a few.
I've read the part of several wisdoms and healers.
9 out of 10 doctors I've met have shaken my hand.
Nynaeve comes up with the idea. She finds white hen pepper, in the quote-unquote wisdom or wisdom's cabinet, and says, "This is white hen pepper. It will soothe a toothache, but it will also turn your hair as black as night." And what she's getting at is that, you know, now Nynaeve and Elaine don't know if people everywhere are searching for her, or they have to assume that they are, so they're going to have to disguise themselves.
Yeah, because they ran into someone randomly. Yeah. When you run into someone randomly who's looking for you, you're in some random town who's like, oh yeah, I have orders to bring you in. You're like, oh shit, there's a big network of people out there who have orders to bring me in. I have to hide. Yeah. And this is, aren't we about to hit the circus?
Yeah, that is coming soon.
Yeah. The first of the circi scenes.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
I remember when we started this podcast, you're like, man, what are we going to do? Are we ever going to get to the circus scenes? Those are so far away. That's like years.
Yeah, well, it's been years, plural.
Yep, it sure has been.
2 of them, but, you know.
That's 2+, definitely.
Oh, and I was just going to read the last section, which is about 2 pages, because it just made sense to read it as one. And that's after Nynaeve's plan to put on their nice dresses and dye their hair and buy a coach rather than their regular wagon, so that they can pretend that Julian and Tom are their, like, coachman and, like, bag handler guy, but I'm sure there's a word. I know there's a word for that. I forget. Valet. And that will be their disguise, which is pretty good. Make Elaine look black Irish rather than red Irish. I'm allowed to say that I'm a ginger.
Only a ginger can call another ginger a ginger? Is that what the...
Nah, nobody cares because we're all white, so...
Jesus.
Just doesn't count. It doesn't count as anything.
Cut all that.
You probably should.
I don't want the gingers rising
because now that I'm
up
thinking
against
about
us.
it... A few people goggled when Noy Torvald's coach pulled up in front of Rond Makura's shop, drawn by a team of 4, with chests strapped to the roof and a saddled horse tied behind. Noy had lost everything when the trade with Tarabon collapsed. He was scraping a living doing odd jobs for Widow Terran now. No one in the street had ever seen the coachman before. A tall, leathery fellow, with long white mustaches and cold, imperious eyes, or the dark, hard-faced footman in Taraboner hat, who jumped down nimbly to open the coach door. The goggling turned to murmurs when 2 women swept out of the shop with bundles in their arms. One wore a green silk gown, the other plain blue wool, but each had a scarf wrapped around her head, so that not so much as a hint of her hair was visible. They all but leapt into the coach.
I love the description of Matt and Julian from an outside perspective as these total badasses, because the women see them as so goofy all the time. And, like, when you actually see them from a different perspective, it's like the hard-eyed man with chiseled face and no mercy. And you know, the women are like, oh, that goofy bastard.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they know them.
Yeah.
But I could see how Tom could, you know...
No, he's terrifying. He's terrifying.
Yeah. And so's Julian. They just know them and are comfortable.
Well, and the women are very good at not seeing the men as competent in their own rights. And that's one of those, where I really do feel like Jordan was trying to turn society on its head and just sort of have the women be constantly dismissive of the men's abilities and sort of hang up a mirror to what we see as like, hey, there's these 2 dudes who are eminently competent doing all these things helping you out, and you're just dismissing them as just men. And I feel like, and they just get these, second fiddle in the story to these powerful women. And I feel like the opposite happens in so many books where the men get their stories told and there's these like women who are helping them out and doing all these things. And they're just like, oh yeah, they're there just being awesome, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's Jordan deliberately turning that trope on its head with these 2. I've been sort of thinking a little bit about how much he starts to do that, especially with like Matt and Tylan and some of these other like real almost disturbing things, but just like portraying events that are disturbing and do happen, but showing them in the opposite direction from where they usually happen by basically having a society with the genders flipped and the power dynamics flipped. It's not perfect through the whole book. It's kind of hard when you have, 3 male heroes to become the most powerful heroes of all time to, portray that all the time. But it's certainly something he tries to show that's how society existed before this era.
Society existed in a different way before
like
in
Rand.
the Age of Legends?
No. I just mean like leading when the White Tower was powerful and we have women queens and men are mistrusted because like this society as it exists is very distrustful of men and very dismissive of men. Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, Elaine and Nynaeve certainly are.
Certainly.
Well, to some whatever degree. 2 of the children began sauntering over to inquire who the strangers were. But while the footman was still scrambling up to the driver's seat, the coachman cracked his long whip, shouting something about making way for a lady. Her name was lost as the children threw themselves out of the way, tumbling in the dusty street, and the coach rumbled away at a gallop toward the Amador Road. The onlookers walked away, talking among themselves. A mysterious lady, obviously, with her maid, making purchases from Rond Makura and rushing away from the children. Little enough happened in Mardichin, whatever it is, of late, and this would provide days of conversation. The children of the light brushed themselves off furiously, but finally decided that reporting the incident would make them look foolish. Besides, their captain did not like nobles. He would probably send them to bring the coach back. A long ride in the heat for no more than an arrogant young sprig of one house or another. If no charges could be brought, always tricky with the nobility, it would not be the captain who took the blame. Hoping that word from their humiliation did not spread, they certainly never thought of questioning Ron Makura. A short time later, Theron Lugay led his cart into the yard behind the shop, provisions for the long journey ahead already packed away under the round canvas top. Indeed, Ron Makura had cured him of a fever that had taken 23 the winter before, but it was a nagging wife and a shrewish mother-in-law that made him glad of a journey all the way to where the witches lived. Rond had said someone might meet him, though not who, but he hoped to make it to Tarvalon. He tapped on the kitchen door 6 times before going in, but it was not until he climbed the stairs that he found anyone. In the back bedroom, Rond and Lucy lay stretched out on the beds, sound asleep and fully clothed, if rather rumpled, with the sun still in the sky. Neither woman roused when he shook them. He did not understand that, or why one of the coverlets was lying on the floor and knotted into strips, or why there were 2 empty teapots in the room but only 1 cup, or why a funnel was lying on Ron's pillow, but he had always known that there was a great deal in the world he did not understand. Returning to his cart, he thought about the supplies Ron's money had purchased, thought of his wife and her mother, and when he led the cart horse off, it was by the intention of seeing what Altara was like, or maybe Murundi. One way and another, it was quite a time before a disheveled Ron Makura tottered up to Avi Shendar's house and sent off a pigeon, a thin bone tube tied to its leg. The bird launched itself north and east, straight as an arrow toward Tarvalon. After a moment's thought, Rond prepared another copy, on another narrow strip of thin parchment, and fastened it to a bird from another coop. That one headed west, for she had promised to send duplicates of all of her messages. In these hard times, a woman had to make out as best she could, and there could be no harm in it, not the sort of report she made to Norenwin. Wondering if she could ever get the taste of fork root out of her mouth, she would not have minded if the report brought a little harm to the one who called herself Nynaeve. Hoeing in his garden patch as usual, Avi paid no attention to what Ron did, and as usual, as soon as she was gone, he washed his hands and went inside. She had placed a larger sheet of parchment underneath the strips to cushion the nib of the pen. When he held it up to the afternoon light, he could make out what she had written. Soon, a 3rd pigeon was on its way, heading in still another direction. Bum, bum, bum! The actual Dark Friend.
Well,
I think, anyway.
You think?
Yeah, I did not Google his name, which I should probably do.
I mixed up the coach, the cart guy and the coach guy. So, Noy Torvald sold his coach to Tom. It's Noy Torvald's coach. But that's not the guy who is going to take the girls to Tarvalon and who ends up just stealing all that money and abandoning his family. That guy is Theron Lugay.
Right. Noy Torvald sold them the coach. Theron Lugay is the cart driver, who I don't think knows anything. He's just there to do the work for this woman who has the money to pay for it.
Right.
And this guy, Avi Shendar, is a farmer and pigeon keeper, his old retiree, it seems like. And he apparently is relaying whatever messages get sent to the Yellow Aja to another source. That says black to me, but it also occurred to me that he could just be like the blue Aja, eyes and ears, and anything the yellows say, the blues know. You know what I mean?
I mean, he runs the pigeon thing. I bet he copies every single message that goes through. I bet someone's paying him for every single message that comes through.
Probably.
You know, like I bet it's
because he knows all the messages going through there, so
exactly.
He can relay that information
exactly
to whoever he wants, or to whoever paid for it.
Exactly. That's the perfect person to bribe, whether he's black or not. You know. And then my other question is, do you have any idea who somewhere else, we don't know who that is, west, east? I mean, we know one's going to Tarvalon. Do we know where any of the other messages are going? I couldn't figure it out.
Nope.
Yeah. I think it's just...
I just looked it up. There's nothing on Avi Shendar except for what we just saw. I assume, though, that... I mean, she's sending a duplicate on purpose, so the intent is for them to go to the same place, but the pigeons don't fly in the same direction. So I assume that one is going straight for Tarvalon, another is going to, like, another safe house, where then that message will be, again, relayed to Tarvalon. This way, there's 2 routes.
We've got 2 votes for White Cloaks are getting the messages, because they're local. But aren't they local? Wouldn't they just get the messages directly? Wouldn't they not need them to be sent? They just make a copy. North to a Chosen, that's I mean, also, what about Grendal? That could be the west one. because she's in Erdomon, right? In her palace. And I bet she would have no problem tracking down the yellow eyes and ears, especially since wasn't she like a healer? So I bet that's where she'd go. I was thinking Ch10, but they're not really around getting messages anymore. And like, what harm could it do? Well, as far as she knows, she's sending this to some socialite or something like that, or whatever Grendel wants her to think. Grendel has a lot of, I know she beats you over the head with the like big mind-bending compulsion she uses on her servants, but she uses a lot of extremely subtle compulsion as well. And she's basically establishing a whole knowledge network.
Well, I feel like probably the best way to figure out what's happening here is, okay, so this is information about Elaine.
Right.
And I believe that Rhonda's intent is to just send duplicate messages to be sure. Now, they may be going to separate locations, or one's going to a secondary location before it gets to the tower, for safety purposes, or both. But in the future, who are like the next people to try to kidnap Elaine, or like who goes after them? You know what I mean? Because those messages would help you find where they are.
Right. And I don't know if we see any reaction from anyone other than the White Tower. And
yeah. And for a woman like Rhonda, anyone who walked in there with the right bearings, who said she was an Aes Sedai and here are your new orders, she would just believe it. So it could be someone like Grendel, Moghedien, Masana.
Yeah.
But it could also be, the White Cloaks, any powerful force here. I have no idea.
God, it does look like Moghedien shows up in Amadisia shortly after this. White Tower, White Cloaks, and Grendel. Yeah, that's good enough. I'm going for it. They're saying just cast Keanu as Zen Rand. Like, when he comes down from the mountain, instead of whoever plays Rand, just have Keanu come walking down.
And then he'll say be excellent to each other?
Totally.
Spent some time up on the mountain, man.
I think he would actually make a decent LTT.
In real life?
Yeah.
Actually?
Like, I mean, yeah, if casting someone as LT, he's old enough, he's got the dark hair, he can certainly play a madman.
It would be a good Logain.
Dude. I can see him picking up the golden hair, being like, dude. It works. It works.
Oh, he would be a good Logain now, or someone. He could even be like a Lan. Does all that kung fu stuff.
Lan's got to have more of a square jaw type personality, a little more solid.
Fair enough. All right, this is the last image I'm going to upload. Tame, that'll be good.
Yeah, he could be a decent Tame.
That's him more recently.
Yeah.
Little bit salt and peppery, not quite yet. Almost,
No,
Anyway.
yeah, I mean, he's maturing. I know there's the whole, like, he never ever gets older thing that's on the internet. But he does, he ages like everybody else. He just ages better than everyone else.
I still listen to Savage Lovecast every week. Leia saying that Keanu Reeves is hot just reminded me of Dan Savage talking about his adolescent fantasies. Keanu Reeves.
I wanted to be Keanu Reeves. Does that count?
Sure, that's an adolescent fantasy.
What do they say? Men want to be him, and women want to be with him.
Women want him, and men want to be him.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. Well, the best laid plans of figs and mice.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?